How could you do that? How could you do a thing like that? What were you thinking? I know, you weren't thinking. You know, the Eibishter gave you a brain. You're supposed to use it. I know why you acted that way. Your whole family acts that way. The whole bunch of them, they're all the same. You and the rest of them, they're all the same. You know what the problem is? I know what the problem is. The problem is you never think about anyone else except yourself. You're so selfish. You only think about yourself. Never think about me. Never think about anybody else. You only think about yourself. Now, I hope no one here ever speaks to their spouse that way. And if you came tonight just to learn that that's not the way to speak to your spouse, then it was kedai you came just for that. However, what do you do if your spouse talks to you that way? That's a separate issue. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. How are you supposed to handle it? What do Chazal say you're supposed to do if your spouse talks to you that way? And how do you get yourself to be able to follow the words of Chazal? And is it really possible? They set such a high standard. So those are the questions we're going to try to address this evening. So first of all, what do Chazal say about a situation like that? When you're unfortunately confronted by a spouse who's insulting you, attacking you, ridiculing you. I certainly hope it never happens, but unfortunately these things do happen. And we have to know how to deal with it if we want to have shalom bayis. The Gemara in Shabbos says, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, eluvim, those people who are embarrassed and disgraced, they ain't an olvim, but they don't insult back. Shomim cherposen, they hear they're being disgraced, they're being ashamed. Beinam mashivim, but they don't answer. They take it, they don't answer. Osen ba'ava, they do it out of love for Kadosh Baruch Hu. V'smeichen b'yisurin, and they rejoice in the suffering. Now, smechen b'yisurin, does that mean they're happy Rahman al-Islam if they have an illness? That's what I was talking about. Rashi says, smechen b'yisurin, the yisurin that comes from the embarrassment, from the shame that you just heard. It's yisurin. No question about it. That's yisurin, Rabbosai. It's yisurin that's as painful and sometimes even more painful than a physical pain. But those who are smechen b'yisurin, aleim akosav omer, those people, those yechidei skula, who can react that way, what does the pasuk say about them? V'ohavav ketzeis Hashem b'gvuraso. They are a Kadosh Baruch Hu's beloved, like the sun when it comes out in its strength. Now, how do we know that a Kadosh Baruch Hu loves people like that? Maybe they're just wimps, right? They don't answer back, they're wimps. How do you know Kadosh Baruch Hu loves them? So the Marsha says, we know a Kadosh Baruch Hu loves them because other people love them. People who are not those who answer back, who lash out when they're embarrassed, attacked, or insulted. Those are people who are beloved by people. They are the brios. And Marsha says, if other people love them, then certainly Kadosh Baruch Hu loves them. Now, what does that mean? Ketzeis Hashemesh b'gvuraso. So I saw brought down from the Tosfos HaRosh pshat, very nice pshat, that this is a reference to the encounter that the sun had with the moon during Shesh Mei Bereshis. And we know the moon was criticizing, in Shnei Malachim b'Shamshim b'Keser Echad, it's not fair, we're both the same size. And then Kadosh Baruch Hu, we know, made the moon smaller. But in that medrash, it doesn't say that the sun responded at all. The sun didn't say, what do you mean? Who were you attacking? And what was it your business? The sun doesn't say anything. And yet the sun remained in its glory that we have Ad Hayom Hazeh. We still feel the strength of the sun. So the reference here is that the son was in a similar situation, hearing it's being attacked, didn't answer back, and we see how the son turned out. Turned out pretty well, Baruch Hashem. Now, how is it possible to follow such words of Chazal, not to answer back when you're embarrassed? I think it's possible if we learn from what I would consider two of the most dramatic psukim in all of Nach, aside from the Akedah, which we read recently, which is certainly a very dramatic episode. But in Shmuel Beis, the Gemara, by the way, was Shabbos Daf Peiches Amud Beis, if anybody wants to look it up later. And the Moshe is in Gittin, on the same Maimer Chazal. Shmuel Beis, Perek Tes Zayin, tells us about the tragic episode that took place to David HaMelech, that his own son marshaled a force of 400 men and was marching on Yerushalayim to usurp the throne and murder his father. A terrible, terrible tragedy. David HaMelech got word of this just in the nick of time to escape, literally barefoot, running with a small band of men to escape for his life. Here's the Melech Yisrael, the king, is running away for his life, being pursued by his own son with a band of 400 men. What a terrible, terrible tragedy to befall any human being. And at this particular point, as he's running away, what happens? The Pasuk tells us that Shimi ben Gera comes out, sees David in this disgraced state, and takes advantage of the opportunity to hurl insults and clods of earth on top of it. Picks up literally clods of earth and throws it at David HaMelech to disgrace him, and curses him. Now we know Rabbosai, the halacha is very clear. Hamorid b'malchus chayev misa. There's no question about it. You don't have to have a din Torah. You don't have to have an Eidim and Asra. He can be executed on the spot. All you need is the say-so of the Melech. But go ahead. So, David HaMelech's general, Avishai ben Tzeruya, says, this man is a dead dog. Why do they call him a dead dog? Because his chayev misa is as if he's dead already. He draws his sword and he says, just say the word and I'll be happy to execute him on the spot. He's chayev b'malchus. He's embarrassed and disgraced David HaMelech publicly. The people who were there heard this. And how does David HaMelech respond? Does he give the nod, go ahead, off with his head? Maybe that's what I would do. Maybe that's what you would do. That's not how David HaMelech reacted. The Pasuk says, Pasuk Yud, V'yomer HaMelech, David HaMelech says, Ma li v'lachem ben Tzeruya. What's the difference to you and me, ben Tzeruya? Ki yikalel, that he cursed. Hashem amar lo kolel. If he cursed me, if I heard a curse, it's min hashamayim, it's b'shert. I was supposed to hear that curse. Umiyad mar madua asisa kain. And who knows why HaKadosh Baruch Hu was nigzer that I had to receive the curse. This is min hashamayim. Everything that happens to a person is min hashamayim. If I heard a curse from Shimi ben Gera, it means that it was nigzer in Shemayim that I should hear that. V'yomer David al Avishai. The next pasuk Yud Aleph, David says to Avishai, "Vel kol avadav, hinei b'ni asher yotze mimei mevakesh es nafshi." Look what matzav I'm in, Rabbosai. The child that I gave birth to, that came from me, my own child, is out to kill me. V'af ki ota beni yamini hinichalo v'yikalel. And this Shimi ben Gera, HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to curse me when I'm already so low, and he's adding insult to injury. Ki amar Hashem. It's because Hashem said that, told him to do it. Pasuk Yud Beis, Ulai yira Hashem be'oni. Maybe Hashem will see my suffering. There's a Korean eksiv And the Kri is be'enai, my eyes. What about my eyes? My eyes are crying. It hurts to be insulted, to be embarrassed publicly. David HaMelech is a human being. He has feelings. He's crying. Maybe a Kadosh Baruch Hu will see my tears. V'heishiv Hashem li tova tachas kilaloso hayom hazeh. And maybe a Kadosh Baruch Hu will give me something good from all of this suffering that I'm having today. Now, we're not going to go through the psukim now, Rabosai. We don't have time, but it's kedai to look it up. The Navi describes how David HaMelech's friend, who he met shortly before, Chisha Arki, I believe it was, that goes into the palace where Avshalom is, and on the advice of David HaMelech, reverses the advice of Achitophel, which gives David HaMelech the breathing room he needs to reconnoiter with his forces. Avshalom does not attack him at that moment when he's most weak, waits till the next day, and then there's a tremendous battle which takes place when David HaMelech has more forces, and David HaMelech's forces win. Avshalom is killed, and there's a entire reversal of fortunes. And we see the Hemshech HaPsukim, that this whole reversal of David HaMelech's fortunes turned on this one episode where David HaMelech was embarrassed, ashamed, and didn't answer back. I think the Limud, Rabosai, is very clear that if a person can have the betochen to believe and act on the belief that Akol B'dei Shemayim, that everything is Min Shemayim, and really believe when he's insulted, ridiculed, or attacked, even by his spouse, that that's Min Shemayim. The spouse was simply the messenger, but the message from Kadosh Baruch Hu. I was meant, for some reason, to be ashamed, embarrassed, and hurt just now. Kadosh Baruch Hu chose my spouse to deliver the message. I don't get angry with the mailman if he brings me a bill, even if it's a very big bill. I'm not angry with him. He just delivered the envelope with the bill in it. So I should be angry with my spouse for delivering a Kadosh Baruch Hu's message to me? If I really believe and really act on that belief, that the insult and the hurt and the embarrassment came from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, then it's not going to be so difficult to follow the words of Chazal, to be Olvim Ve'enu Malibin, the Shomim Cheprosim Ve'enu Meshivim, not to respond and not to react. Now, that's a very high standard. I don't know if you could do it. I don't know if I can do it. I think it's very, very difficult. But if you want to ask me if it's possible, the answer is yes. How do I know? Because I was an eyewitness. And I experienced an episode that was very uncomfortable and unpleasant for me. But I believe the only reason that I experienced it was I could share it with you this evening. A number of years ago, it was well before I opened my office in Lakewood, and by the way, just to correct any misconceptions, I still have an office in Brooklyn, in addition to my office in Lakewood. I was in a city which will be unnamed for reasons that will become apparent as I proceed. I was in a city and I saw announcements that a particular Adam Gadol was giving a public address that evening. And I was so excited that I was going to be in that city to be able to hear this Adam Gadol speak, Barabim. It was a tremendous chus, and I was delighted. And later the same day, I met a relative of mine who lived in that particular city. And he said, if I was interested, the same Adam Gadol was going to be speaking in his house for a private Vaad later that evening. And even though it was by invitation only, since he's my relative and it's in his house, he has reshus to invite whoever he wants. And he's inviting me if I want to come. I say, well, I'm honored. I'm delighted, of course, I'd love to, but now I have a conflict. I don't know what to do. Because I heard he was speaking the same night across town, and I wanted to hear him there. I'd love to hear him in your house, and I'd love to hear him there, but I don't know how I can get from your house across town. He'll probably have a driver whisk him across town. I'll have to take public transport. I'm not going to get there in time. I'll miss it. I don't know which one to go to. Now you gave me a dilemma. He said, Meir, I'll tell you what. I know the Adam Gadol's driver. I'm going to speak to him and ask him if he could take you along. Now, if you'll be careful to sit near the door, and when he's finished, you'll go into the car and wait for Adam Gadol, then you can go in his car and you can hear him in my house, and you can hear him at the Asifa, and you'll hear both. I said, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm delighted. So I followed his instructions and I sat near the door. And when the Vaad was over in my relative's house, so I quickly ran out. I saw the car waiting outside. I said, you're the driver for this Adam Gadol? He said, yes. My name is Meir Wikler. Yes, I know. Get in already. I got in the back. He said, get in, because as soon as the Rav comes, we have to rush off town because we're a few minutes late. We've got to get there in time. I said, I understand. I sat in the back seat, catching my breath. A few minutes later, the Adam Gadol comes out, surrounded by a swarm of the people that were inside, just escorting him, asking him questions, just to be in his presence a few moments longer, escorting him to the car. The whole item that was in the house came out to the street, got into the car. As soon as the door closes, the driver whisks off, racing down the street. And I see the Adam Gadol sitting in the front. He leans over and he whispers something in the driver's ear. The driver slams on the brakes, and I thought, uh-oh, they realize I'm in the car. They want to kick me out. Okay. I thought, I guess it's not going to work. The driver puts the car in reverse, zooms back to the spot where he was before, and I thought they're going to say, okay, Wikler, get out. Yeah. Okay, I was prepared for that. I'm ready to open the door and get out, and the other side of the back door opens up, and the Rebbitzin gets in. And she sits in the other side of the back seat, and then drove home. I didn't realize the Rebbitzin was there also. She, I guess, maybe wanted to hear her husband speak at the Vaad, and she also wanted to hear him speak at the Asifa. So I'm sitting on one side of the back seat, and the Rebbitzin's on the other side, and we drive off. It's silent for a moment. Then the Rebbitzin says, what did you have to schlep it out in there for? You always do that, she says to him. You know they're expecting you across town now. You couldn't end it a few minutes earlier. People are waiting for you over there. You never listen to me. You always go on, and that wasn't enough. You spoke long enough in there. You had to stay longer. I don't know what's the matter with you. They're waiting for you. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm looking, where can I dig a hole in the back seat of this car to hide? I was horrified. I thought to myself, they couldn't realize that I'm sitting here listening to this. The Rebbitzin the Rav couldn't believe that I'm sitting here listening to this. Maybe if I don't breathe, they won't hear me, and they won't realize I'm still in the car. I didn't know where to hide, what to do. The car is whizzing down the highway. I was ready to jump out of the car and throw myself in the street and yacholti, but I just couldn't stay there any longer. But car was going so fast, it was mamish a sakana to get out. And she didn't stop there. And she went on, lacing into this Adam Gadol, criticizing him for speaking too long and criticizing him for leaving without her. Didn't you know I'm coming with you? You let the car go off without me? Yeah. I'm standing by the curb. We made up I'm supposed to come with you. And you drove off without me. I'm standing on the curb. I thought, what's going to be? How am I going to get there? It's a good thing you remembered and came back, but we shouldn't drove off in the first place. And she was giving him the business. And I thought to myself, how is he taking this? How is he sitting there listening to his Rebbitzin dress him down, if not in front of me, in front of the driver? He knows the driver, it's his regular driver. He must be terribly embarrassed. And I kind of moved over a little bit, and the driver's rear view mirror was positioned in such a way that if I tilted my head a little bit, I could get a glimpse of the Rav's face. And we came to a lit area, so the inside of the car was very lit up, and I got a clear view of the Rav's face looking in the driver's rear view mirror. And he had an angelic calmness on his face that you only see by very, very yechidei skula that can achieve that level of menucha at any time. And here, his wife is lambasting him, publicly disgracing him and embarrassing him. And he's got this gentle smile of calmness on his face and didn't even take a breath as if he's trying to say something and holding it back. Well, Baruch Hashem, we made it across town in mercilessly short amount of time. And we got out, there was a throng of people on the street waiting for this Adam Gadol. As the car door opened, it was Mamash Kriyas Yam Suf as they parted to let him go. He went up to the front on the podium, up to the dais. I got out, barely squeezed in the back. There wasn't even standing room, but I had to get in just to see what was going to happen. Whoever was speaking, I don't remember who it was, someone was speaking at the microphone. As soon as I saw this Adam Gadol walk in, whoever was speaking stopped what he said in mid-sentence. This Adam Gadol had arrived. Everyone stood up. Everyone was quiet. No one said a word till the Adam Gadol got up to the microphone, and then he gave his address. And Rabbosai, I'm sorry to say, I don't remember what he said that night. I couldn't hear a word of what he said because I couldn't stop replaying the scene that I had just seen a minute ago in the car and couldn't get over it. And it caused me a tremendous amount of tsar, and that I had to witness such an event. But I think perhaps it was necessary, it was Min Hashamayim, that I should be there to share with you this episode that I witnessed in order to drive home the point, to answer the question that I asked earlier. Is it possible to follow the words of Chazal, not to answer when you're embarrassed by your spouse, even if it's a public embarrassment? The answer, of course, is yes, it is possible. And the example set by the Adam Gadol, which is obviously not going to be named, but stands for us as an example of what's possible for a person to achieve, to be able to reach that madrega, to know how to deal with situations when, unfortunately, we may be embarrassed and insulted and attacked by our spouses. I just want to say before we end that I do appreciate all of the feedback that I get on the Vaad from not only those of you here, but those of you who may be watching on the video and approach me or respond through the email. We have an email address for comments and suggestions for future topics, which is chinuchvad123@gmail.com. But again, I must beg your forgiveness that I'm really not able to respond to personal questions on the email address. It's only for comments that don't require any response from me or suggestions of future topics. And if you make a suggestion for a topic and it's not used, please don't be insulted. We get many suggestions. They can't all be used for topics at the Vaad, but they are very much appreciated. And the next Vaad, B'ezras Hashem, will be here in the Sterling Place Sfard shul downstairs in 4 weeks, which comes out to be December 10th. It's the Sunday before Hanukkah. Hope we'll see you all then. Have a good Chodesh.